morning, good afternoon, good evening. The War Veterans Association received their Presidential War Veteran Fund checks. It's a picture of some of them receiving their big check. The whole country is receiving $1.5 million US. And since there are 10 provinces, each province is getting 150,000. And the war veterans received the check and were clearly very impressed. It is nice to be a simpleton. You have to be a simpleton. Because they were only impressed by the size of the check itself, which is about 1 meter by 3 meters long. But the amount that's there is not really much. When you divide it, I think some of the war veterans will be very lucky if they ever get $7.50 from that. And it is interesting that the last 2 weeks, most of the war veterans have been vocal. They've been complaining about the economic hardships that they're facing, and not to be seen to be only advancing one cause. They've been talking about the economic hardships ordinary people are facing. But anyone with any brain at all have told you they're only bringing in the suffering of Povo as a smoke screen. When they received their fat check, or rather their big check, they received it, but they never asked, what about Povo? They know, as well as everybody knows, that the regime does not care about Povo. The only time the regime cared about Povo was during the elections themselves, when the best the regime could do for Povo was buy them chicken in and chips. And ferry them from one rally to another. And then the war veterans took over, frog marched Povo to attend rallies, and then later on to vote for the party. The regime is doing the same thing now. I think it is interesting to compare that while the war veterans are getting $7.50, Mnangagwa paid $500,000 US to each of his ministers during the 2023 elections. That was called a housing loan. Everybody knows that was a bribe. The war veterans are being naive. They seriously expect that this will solve their problems. How naive can you be? Of course, it will not solve anything. Even if each one of them got $150,000 US, it will just be a matter of time before they'll be back again begging. Because as long as we've got a failed economic system, it is not the seed money you want to be successful. It is the correct economic environment. And this is what is shocking about these war veterans. They failed to realize that Zimbabwe's economic and political mess is a result of the failed political system. The system that they themselves have played their part to impose on the nation. This latest bribe is to get them back on track to doing ZANU-PF's dirty work. I think ZANU-PF, what they've done is brainwash the war veterans into believing that the war veterans and ZANU-PF leaders are first-class citizens, and they're the only ones with the divine right to rule the country. They themselves are flattered by the honor of being considered first-class citizens who have a voice, who have a vote. And in their misplaced enthusiasm, they've taken it upon themselves to deny the rest of the populace the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. While they've got nothing out of supporting ZANU-PF, they are, whether they care to admit it or not, they are just as poor as the rest of the masses out there. They get occasionally, they pay out the bribes, but only when ZANU-PF wants them to do some of the dirty work for the party. As soon as that is done, they are forgotten. The 1.5 million or the $7.50 that each one will get them absolutely nowhere. It is a pity that even after 45 years, the penny has not dropped. I emphasize again, what we need in Zimbabwe is to end the dictatorship, not to be swapping one dictator for another. But our brainwashed war veterans, while they may be rallying now, calling for Mnangagwa to go, they cannot think of anybody else other than another ZANU-PF leader taking his place. In other words, they are only rallying to replace one dictator with another. Among the war veterans who received and welcomed this presidential fund was none other than Jabulani Sibanda. And many people will remember him as the face of the war veterans during the 2008 electoral coup. This is the role that the war veterans have become known by. And Mnangagwa is paying them to do. Let's just refresh our memories of the 2008.
2008 patakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai ndandiri election agent ya-president. Ma-results abuda tiri pa-party headquarters vamutasa vanga vari secretary vedu ve-administration vamutasa muripi ndafona ndiri kwarusapi komogwenda kwarusapi seka ma-results achibuda kudai vanga aiwa zvako izvo Mnangagwa ndezvako endaenda kumusha ofisi vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose watofunga kuti zani yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini kateda sei manje mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira baba gadzirai politburo cabinet musarangarira zvimwe zvipi gadzirai chi cabinet asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 ma-results abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35 they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Harusi rufaro. We know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
The war veterans played their role in 2008 in the electoral coup to impose Mugabe. In 2017, the war veterans played their role in imposing Mnangagwa. I think what we are seeing now is the war veterans once again doing ZANU-PF's dirty bidding. While some are fighting that Mnangagwa should stay in power, the other are fighting to impose a new dictator. Neither solution is not a solution to the country. We want an end to the dictatorship, not just swapping one dictator with another. Alas, that message is failing to get through our war veterans. They've been brainwashed to believe that they are first-class citizens. Their decision on who should rule the country is supreme. This is why both sides now are each coming up with their own counterclaim to further the interests of their particular chosen candidate. We are just going round and round in circles here. We are getting absolutely nowhere. So I would like to reiterate the point. The war veterans should realize by now, 45 years after independence, 45 years of rigged elections, that the root cause of Zimbabwe's economic and political crisis is 45 years of bad governance. No one has the divine right to rule. The right to rule the country should be based on winning the majority in a free, fair, and credible election. This is something that Zimbabwe has failed to do in 45 years. And if the war veterans were not such simpletons, they would realize it by now that they are not doing the country any favors by imposing this ZANU-PF dictatorship. I repeat, no one has the divine right to rule Zimbabwe. The people of Zimbabwe, all Zimbabweans, should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. After 45 years with the country up to its eyeballs, the war veterans, the penny should have dropped so that they realize that this system is not working. And this idea of ZANU-PF coming back every so often with a few dollars to bribe them is an insult. Like I said, even if each one of them got the 150,000, which is what each province was getting from this presidential fund, it will just be a matter of a few months, years at maximum, before they are back to begging again. Not because they are incompetent, but because the political system has failed. You cannot expect economic prosperity when there is so much corruption, mismanagement, and criminal waste of the nation's human and material resources. As long as ZANU-PF remains in power, Zimbabwe will remain a pariah state, and there will be no meaningful economic recovery. And that affects us all. For the record, the war veterans keep saying they are fighting for Povo. If they are serious about that, they should know that what the ordinary people, Povo, particularly in the rural areas, want is a right to own a few meters of land on which their hut is built. Title deeds, something that the wise denied them. And now ZANU-PF is denying them for no other reason than selfish political gain. The war veterans should be asking for the people to be given the right to own the land on which their hut is built. That is not too much to ask. They can have the big fact checks. All the people in the rural area is the right to own the few meters of land on which their hut is built. That will be the most significant change in Zimbabwe's political and social sphere. Because if the people have the right, the title deeds to the land, they will build a decent home for themselves. They will invest in developing that piece of land, planting fruit trees, building a decent home, wells, toilets, and change their lives. ZANU-PF does not want them to have that economic power for their own selfish political reasons. I believe that title deed will benefit the war veterans themselves too, since most of them still live in the rural areas. As long as they do not have title deeds, even this promise of they will have wells drilled at their homestead, the day they die, their family may find themselves being forced off that piece of land because somebody wants that well for themselves. And we know how the Zimbabwe political system works. The family will only be accused of supporting the opposition, and thus all the party needs to know to justify kicking them off the land. Whereas if they have title deeds, the party will not be able to do that. Let's get this very clear. I repeat, we are not interested in swapping one dictator for another. We are not interested in repeating 2017. What the country needs to move on is dismantling the dictatorship itself. And the most effective way of doing so is making sure that all Zimbabweans' right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country is restored. Why that is so incomprehensible beggars belief. Thank you very much. Have a good day.